Packer Nation? Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. This is where we kill all your dreams about free agency, Grossi, and today we are going to do just that. This was an episode that I've been thinking about, I've been dreaming about, and usually this is the time where Super Bowl's over, I start looking towards free agency, and as I looked into free agency, I was like, wait a minute. The salary cap is a thing. And so, returning to the show from nearly a year hiatus, he is the co-host of the Unknown Packers podcast. He is the Twitter Packers cap wizard. Ladies and gentlemen, returning to the show, Mr. Ken Ingalls.
Wow, what an intro there. I don't know if I deserve that. Is that all right? Yeah, hell yeah, I'll take it, man. That's great. Okay. Flattered.
Good. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I really wanted to like build you up like significantly. So the expectations now are sky high. There's no pressure whatsoever.
Okay. Well, hopefully I don't fail miserably for you.
If you do, it's okay. Nobody's watching. So Ken, buddy, it's been a while. I'm so glad to have you on. And in case for some way, somehow, people don't know who you are, can you kind of give a little background on this cap wizard moniker that you have earned that we just talked about 5 minutes ago that I was going to call you? Can you tell me how that emerged and how you became so entrenched in everything Packers cap and destroying all those who oppose you?
Wow. Yeah. I don't know if I go that far, but I'll take it. Destroying those who oppose
just with
me.
Math.
No.
Math.
Yeah, just a math. I'm just a guy. I'm an accountant, right? I do numbers, huge Packer fan. And I started a Twitter account. I don't even know how long ago, just to follow beat writers and hang out on Twitter and kind of see what's going on. And then I started learning about the cap and being more interested in that and really understanding how that influences what the Packers can and cannot do, and understanding the cap and understanding football. And then I think I saw one too many OBJ to the Packer tweets, and I started actually writing back, and somehow people liked what I had to say. And here I am.
And here you are, buddy.
Here I am.
You are. Now, I mean, and here's the thing. We had you on last year, and I absolutely loved that episode because, you know, a lot of the times the DMs that I get are should the Packers sign X? If they have a pulse and they have produced a yard in the past year, I get the DMs, right, about that one person. It doesn't matter what position they are. I can't tell you how many Deshaun Watson DMs I got. And I was just like, you guys know we have the MVP, right? Like that just happened, but okay, cool. And the reason why I love this is because it's such an alternate view on what's going on with football that, quite honestly, so many people don't even like look at or attempt to understand because they're like, numbers are hard, and they don't do it. And what I love about last year's episode is like you broke it down in a way that was not only like correct, but it was also like simplistic enough for people to be like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And that's why I appreciate you so damn much, Ken.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I do what I can. You know, that's part of it. Is that like part of it is understanding the math and the numbers. Like in my day job as an accountant, yeah, math is part of it. If you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide using a computer, right? Like that's the math you need. But it's really understanding the business behind the numbers, and that's why I love the salary cap, because that's what drives the business of the NFL, and why I think the NFL is just so great, because you have this great equalizer amongst all the teams. And if you can understand that, you can really understand, what these teams are going to do before they even do it.
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty good, like predictor, right? Of like of
crystal
what's going to
ball.
happen. Yeah, exactly. And you're just like, I'm just sitting here with it. Like, I know. And, to kind of start things off, and I've been talking about this on the show a little bit, you look at a team like the New Orleans Saints, right? Mm-hmm. Who are just a wee bit of trouble, just a smidge. And that's kind of become very publicized of like, oh my God, even, with them restructuring Drew Brees' contract, like they're going to have to, cut these guys and restructure this, and this. And I feel like that has almost given Packers fans like a false sense of security. Why? I don't know. But they're just like, whoa, okay, we're not the Saints, but because like the Packers always take care of the cap. But can you introduce the current cap situation for the Green Bay Packers and why I am currently and probably not going to be producing a whole lot of let's get this guy in free agency videos because it's just not possible this year, Ken.
Right. Well, their cap situation isn't the Saints, right? But
which is down here.
Which is it's low, but they're not great. They're like bottom 5 in the league, according, depending on where you look. Right now, obviously, COVID's a thing. We all know that. And with that, the league lost a ton of money. And part of that arrangement that the league and the players union came to in August was like, all right, how are we going to figure out how we're going to spread this out? And so they're going to take a hit over the next 2 or 3 years. They still haven't ironed out the details, which is a little concerning. But the latest and greatest is that the cap's going to drop down to 180. That's like the latest. It could go to 175. It could still be that low. Yeah. It can be higher, but we don't know. And the teams might not even know until like a few days before the league year starts, which is insanity. So they have to basically plan on the worst case scenario because you can't get all this business done in like 4 days and hope to be under the cap. But so they're at 180. They rolled over just under 4. If you remember, the cap this year was 198. So that's a pretty hefty decline. If you just add up all the guys that they have under contract right now, and again, that's pre-draft, pre-free agency, getting our own guys back even, right? I've got them at $29.4 million over the cap. So what that means is the league year starts in March 17th. Yep. So like a month. And so before then, they need to clear 29.4 before they can even think about signing a free agent. Mm-hmm. Even if they bring back like a Robert Tonyan, right? Yep. Even an Alan Lazard, super cheap, it still adds, you're still digging a little bit more of a problem, right? And that's where this difficulty comes in. The Packers haven't been in a situation like this where they need to potentially cut guys, really rework deals, push money out as far into the future as possible to make it tomorrow's problem instead. Just to like start at 0. Sure. That's scary.
Yeah. I mean, and last year we talked about this, right? Of like kicking the can down the road. And if I'm not mistaken, we also talked about the Minnesota Vikings, right? Because at this point last year, we were just like, oh, they're going to be in trouble. And look at all the guys that were not on their team this year, right?
Exactly.
I mean, like,
exactly.
These are the consequences of it. I mean, I think we talked about like the Broncos too, right? Like that one year where they brought in everyone. We talked about the Rams, like, and how like they felt that problem, and look at all the guys that they had to get rid of as well. Like these are the consequences of it. And I think Packers fans have become very used to the idea of like, oh, well, like the Russ Ball will like, figure something out, and then they'll work something and they'll do some magic numbers and things like that. It's either you're going to pay it now or you're going to have to pay it down the road. And hey, like we're in now at this point. And, like it's a little bit time to pay the piper.
Right. And that's where I think some of the cap is a myth stuff comes into play, just because the salary cap in the NFL is so complex. It's so much more complex and involved than something like the NBA, that there's all these mechanisms and levers that you can pull to like make it appear that things are okay.
Yeah.
But then it's like you open the closet and all your skeletons fall out. Right. So
yeah, pretty much. You're just like, we just like pushing it back in.
Just don't look in that closet back there.
Just don't look in. And like, cause that's the thing that like was the talk of like the off season was like the Kansas City Chiefs, right? That they were signing like these massive deals to get like what they got, like Frank Clark and Kelsey and Patrick Mahomes that they're giving, $500 million to, which is never going to come to fruition. Like,
right. There's and Mahomes deal, like, Mahomes still like, he's still basically getting paid on like a rookie deal this year, even though we signed that massive deal. The money doesn't even kick in until 3 years down the road.
Yeah.
And even then it's still a discount, which is insane.
Mm-hmm. And here's the problem too. And this is something that obviously, JJ Watt happened today when this is filming, when, he hit his. And of course, the immediate thing was like, maybe even before this, it was like, should we sign JJ Watt and what have you? But like what you're telling me and what you're telling everybody is, again, like, we're just trying to get to zero at this point, and there's already going to be losses, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's already going to be people who are on this team right now that are not going to be here, like, in this next season.
Right. There are 4 ways that the Packers can create cap. You can extend play. Let's start with like the happy sunshine options, right? You can extend them, keep them around for longer, right? And push money down the road. You can restructure them, where you're basically paying them the exact same number of dollars.
Yes.
But you're just calling it something else different in accounting land, and again, pushing that money down further.
Yes.
Or now you start getting into not so fun. You can come up to them and be like, hey, I know you're supposed to make $10 million this year, but can you make like 2 instead? That'd be great. Yeah. That's an option. Or you cut them. You can't trade them. You cannot trade, because you can't trade until the new league year starts, but you need to be under the cap before the new league year starts.
So, Ken, I'm going to ask you, because I'm sure that this is already a question that's popping up in the minds. What if you're not? like what happens? Like, if you're just like, if the Packers are just like, it's fine. It's fine. Because cap doesn't exist.
You don't want to be that guy, because you're probably not going to be able to get a job in the NFL. But like, let's just say the clock turns and you're over the cap. So from what I understand is you're going to lose draft picks. You're going to get heavily fined. And then the league starts auto voiding contracts until you're under the cap in reverse order of when they signed. So you can actually, in theory, create a worse cap situation, but in that auto voiding, than if you were just to take care of it yourself.
Because the league is just like, this is the price of me having to clean up your room. Like,
this isn't the NBA where they kind of have a salary cap and they're like, okay, you got this luxury tax thing. No, it's like, it's a hard cap and you just aren't over it, period. So
that's fantastic.
I could see a world where the NFL maybe is like, okay, maybe instead of being under the cap right away, maybe they'll give like a week grace period.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the salary cap still exists. It's not going to go away. We're not going to have an uncapped year, but maybe for a week, you got a week more to, get your homework and get your affairs in order.
Extending the tax deadline. That's essentially what
it is. Right. You're doing an
extension,
tax extension. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So in that case, right, like you're talking about, because again, this is also the penalty of having really good players, right? Like, you look at it like a team, and this is why you try to get to a Super Bowl, like, with a franchise QB on their rookie deal, right? And you don't pay all these people all of this money, because you can't pay everybody. Unfortunately, you can't turn it off like it is in Madden, where you're just like, salary cap doesn't need to happen. So in terms of like the guys who are probably I'm going to call them offenders in this case, but it's not their fault. They're making lots of money. Like the guys who are kind of like draining from the cap that either could be cut or are like targets for restructured. Who are you looking at to potentially alleviate some pain?
Yeah, a lot of pain. So I have a scenario that gets them pretty close. Unfortunately, that means we got to cut, not restructure or like ask to take a pay cut, but like you're no longer on the team. Preston Smith, Christian Kirksey, Ricky Wagner, Dean Lowry. I'm not done. That's the start.
I'm letting you finish. I'm just staring.
Yeah. Those were the 4 guys I've kind of always had in the back of my mind for a few months. But even then, you're still going to need to get some work done. David Bakhtiari now, you're kind of like, but didn't he just sign a deal? Yes, but his deal was structured in a way to allow flexibility depending on where the cap came in, where I think he's due like an $11 million roster bonus on the 3rd day of 2021 league year. So like March 19th or so. And so what they'll do is they'll still pay him that same dollar amount, but then they'll convert either all or some of that and call it signing bonus. And again, push it out way back. And so then it's like $2 million for the next 4 years.
Sure.
And so that can create up to 8.3 million. So in my scenario, I have them going all the way on this, going full push out on Bakhtiari.
Okay.
And then I also have them looking at a Devontae extension. That guy's going to get paid a lot of money. I think he deserves it. He's going to probably be, top 2 or 3 wide receiver money in the league. The only thing against him right now is his age, but again, he's 27 or turning 28. He's still relatively young, but some of those guys are like 25 with crazy money. So, but I think they can save between like 4 and 6 million in an extension there. Again, he still has his signing bonus that he'd have to work off, plus his new signing bonus. So it's not as much as maybe you might think, that you could save. But then I also have him bringing back Tunyon on a restricted free agent. I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, of course.
But that's 3.4 million. All those things combined, I have them at, you still need 1.4 million to get to 0, right? And we haven't even talked about guys like, let's bring back Corey Linsley. Let's bring back Aaron Jones, right?
Yep.
But the guys I haven't talked about are Aaron Rodgers and Zadarius Smith. There's some other veterans too, like Amos, Crosby, Funchess. Basically, anyone who's not on their rookie deal is fair game for some sort of restructure, extension, pay cut, or trade to try and, get under that cap.
Yeah. Because I feel like, when you're talking, and this is how you get into a situation, right, where you're paying guys, or you're paying for guys that aren't on the team anymore, right?
Oh yeah, like the dead cap for those 4 guys. If I just do a quick ad, what's that? $14 million to cut those 4 guys plus. If you cut them, as pre-June 1 cuts. Yep. Yeah. You are it's like playing poker without a full deck of or full, deck of cards. You're starting a race, a minute after everyone gets a start.
And that's the thing tough. Too. There's also draft picks, right? There's.
Oh yeah. But this is just to get to the March 17th. Yeah. That's just the draft another month. That's going to be another $1 million to $2 million, depending on, if they trade up and, Gutekunst likes to move around. They've got 10 picks now. Who knows where it'll be? Another $1.5 million at least that they got to find. Plus, then let's talk about, starting the season. You've got the practice squad. Those guys, believe it or not, combined for over $3 million. About $3 million that you got to have. That counts.
That money counts too. The money that we spend counts.
Yeah. Go figure. We're in this crazy offseason period where only 51 contracts count. The top 51, or at least the salaries of the top 51 guys. When the regular season starts, everyone counts. So there's 53 guys. Mm-hmm. So you have to add at least 1.3 million if they're the bottom barrel salary guys. Plus, you can't go in with $0 in your cap because, as we know, the Packers move people up. All those elevations that we did, every single time they elevated a guy, that's $30-something thousand, right? And that adds up. It was over $1 million that they just so even keeping a small savings account of $5 million, and that could even go towards extensions for the following year, just like we used it for Bakhtiari and Kenny Clark this year. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot going on.
Well, that's what it seems like. And again, you talked about Devontae Adams, Jair Alexander is about to walk himself into a nice payday. That's going to be a thing. There's, it's a matter of, okay, you can push so much money out, right? You could do that so many times, but eventually, it's going to be a deficit even when some of those guys are not going to be on the team anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be in the same scenario where you're just okay, what do we do? Do we cut these guys now, or do we keep on pushing it back? Because eventually the bill is going to come due.
Right. Ideally, when you restructure a guy, they have more than 2 years under contract.
Yeah.
Because which is unfortunately not the Packers' case. Most of their veterans are guys who are under contract this year and next year, which means if you go and you do just a restructure where we just, hey, we're just going to call your salary signing bonus instead. If you save $2 million this year, that means you got a $2 million problem next year.
Yep.
It's a 1-for-1. But if you've got more than 2 years, then it's a little bit more doable because then it spreads it. But it's literally like, it's like I like the way I like to talk about it. It's like shoveling your driveway. But instead of shoveling the snow off to the side, you're just shoveling it further down the driveway. So then you get further down, and now you're like, okay, what the hell? Like I have to clear the original snow plus all the stuff I piled on top, and you're creating this huge problem that eventually is unavoidable. It works in theory if the cap keeps going up.
That's what I was about to say. Okay, because like again, but these next 2 to 3 years, right? Like because of COVID and like, because again, if they all were like, hey, you know what? Let's just take the hit just this 1 year. Like that cap is going to be like teams would be like, I don't know what to do because.
Oh my God. Yeah. If they did not come to an agreement in August,
yeah,
the language of the salary cap basically would have allowed the league to call everything in 2021. And we'd be looking at like, what, $100 million, $120 million salary cap.
Like, well, I guess we're screwed now.
Yeah. So 175, like they knew what they were doing. They're like, yeah, like that's a pretty big support that we're putting in and propping up the salary cap next year. But it's also going to be a 2022 problem and a potentially 2023 problem as well. Like they're spreading this thing out over 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
And again, like you said, like if everything was normal, like you said, like there would still be issues, right? Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be as like severe or drastic, but I mean, like it was still going to be an issue. Right. And I got 2 questions that are associated with that. So all of that being said, you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers, right? In which there has been plenty of talk, obviously, new MVP, played his ass off, played real, real well. There's been talk, before this season of after we drafted Jordan Love, okay, like after like 2 years, maybe that's when you say goodbye to Rodgers, right? Just for like cap purposes. Would you say that everything going on makes that more likely, or is it completely dependent on like, again, obviously Rodgers developing and Jordan Love developing, or I'm sorry, Rodgers not regressing and Jordan Love developing and all that great stuff. But like at the end of the day, there still is like that cap that's like, hey,
hey, yeah. A few things threw a wrench in that whole, Jordan Love plan, I guess, or the potential plan. One of those was Rodgers winning that MVP because I don't think the Packers thought he could do that.
I agree.
Which is why I think Jordan Love exists in a Packers uniform today.
I agree.
So, but here's the thing. So my scenario that I kind of laid out where we're getting rid of those 4 guys, we're extending, we're restructuring, we're bringing back Tunyon and some other cheap guys, and we still got $1.4 million to work with. We didn't touch Rodgers.
Yeah.
So that window for if the Packers want to move to Jordan Love exists in 2022 today or in 2023. But what if they do something to Rodgers' contract, right? If they go all out with a restructure.
Yeah.
Well, I'll back up. Aaron Rodgers' contract offers by far the most cap relief on this team.
Sure.
If they go like all out where they drop his salary to the minimum for him, take his roster bonus down, take everything down, they can create $13.6 million if they just push it out. If they add some phony years on the back end, add 2 fake years that don't exist, but again, it's for those salary cap accountants, rules, they can pump that up to 16 plus million. Okay. If they do that, Jordan Love is not going to be a starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers on his rookie deal.
Yeah, on his rookie deal.
Right. If they don't touch his contract, I think it's pretty clear that the Packers are leaving that door pretty open for a Love transition. But what if they restructure and clear up 4? Or 5? Like it's a sliding scale, right? Sure. Between 0 and 13 or like 16 if they get like crazy. Of like, I know that Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur stood in front of the podiums and they said, he's our guy. He's going to be here for many years. But money talks. And what they do with this contract will tell a much clearer story than anything that either of those 2 guys could say in front of the media.
Yeah.
Like when they're just trying to kill a national media like narrative of like Rodgers is unhappy. Like,
Sure.
let's tamp that down. He's our guy. We love him.
Yep.
But like, if they fully restructure Rodgers, or if they do some like, rip up his contract and start over, like, okay, he's the guy, and he'll be, like, maybe hopefully best case scenario, Tom Brady playing into his like mid 40s of winning Super Bowls, right?
Yeah.
But if they don't, that tells you that, hey, we still like this guy that we drafted up for in the first round last year, and we think he might, be something.
I mean,
crazy, man.
Right now, what does he have? 3 more years, Rodgers?
They're both up at the same time through 2023.
Okay.
Love technically has the 5th year option.
He has the 5th year option, yeah.
But like they won't exercise a 5th year fully guaranteed option.
Correct.
Unless they've seen him play.
Exactly, which they have to do by, was it year 4 or is it year 3 they have to?
So it's after year 3.
Yeah.
They would have to exercise it. So like Jair, right? They're going to exercise Jair's 5th year option this offseason.
Yes.
To put him for 2022. So like that's always been the thing. And they changed the rules where it's now fully guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Where before you can just exercise the option and be like, never mind, this guy stinks. Yeah. And you just, cut him or trade him, and it's not a problem. But if you exercise that option and without seeing him take an NFL snap, that's risky. That's why I've always said like 2022 makes the most sense, where you want to see him play for a year before they have to make that decision to fully guarantee, which can be up to like franchise tag money. Like it's not cheap.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and that's why like timing wise is not great. Like it's just like, no. I don't think
it's a good problem to have.
Sure.
But like Packer Nation's like heads cannot fathom the fact that there may be 2 people who are capable of potentially playing quarterback.
Yes.
Right. But if you step back and look at it, it's like, it's a good problem to have.
Absolutely.
And Jordan Love is a Green Bay Packer. I'm not going to like wish ill will upon the guy. I'm going to root for him because maybe he's in their grand plans.
He's the next guy. Like, what I mean? Like, and it works out, and that'd be fantastic. And that'd be great. Yeah. So you're saying basically take a look at what they do with Rodgers' contract. And if they don't really change a whole lot, then it's like, door's still open for like Love to come on in, because maybe, Rodgers regresses a ton, and that's what the Packers have been expecting. Because listen, to be fair, and I want to be fair here, not last season, but the season before that, there were a couple times you look at Rodgers and you're like, okay, like he didn't play bad, right? But
right.
Like, there was like some throws that was like, oh, he usually makes those. Like you saw like little tiny bits of regression, and then he came out and was like, I'm going to destroy you all. But like, and I think like I don't hate the move of getting Jordan Love. I did hate like the fact that we gave up a 4th for it.
Right.
And as you and I talked about, like they wanted Jordan Love. Like that's who they wanted.
Right. And like going into the 2020 draft, you heard a lot of talk of like, is this the year they take a quarterback? Yeah, maybe they should take a quarterback. Yeah. But then it's like, hey guys, I didn't want you to take a 1st round quarterback.
Yes.
Like I wanted you to take like a 3rd round quarterback. Yep. But the fact that it's a 1st round, and I get it. But sure. Yeah, they obviously wanted it. This wasn't a like, oh, shucks, look at our draft board. We only have 1 guy left. Maybe we should go. Like, this is a franchise altering decision to trade up to ensure that you get a quarterback in the 1st round. The 1st round of the NFL draft, when you have Aaron Rodgers on your team, who you just gave a contract extension to,
who wants to play till he's 40.
Yeah, 2 years prior, who has been very vocal about playing long term. Like that didn't just happen. There were lots of conversations that happened at the highest level of that organization to be like, we're all cool with this, right? And we all know what this means, right? So
this is opening up a door that's not going to be fun. Like it's
we can't just close this and hope it goes away. Like this is going to be a topic of conversation until one of those guys is in here.
Correct. Yeah. And kind of to jump off of that, last year we touched base. I did a video saying that the Packers are going to have a wide receiver problem because everyone was talking about last year. And, you know, listen, I expected that we were going to get a wide receiver last year to actually circumvent this problem, right? But we didn't. You know, we brought in Funches, but, you know, opted out, whatever. So the wide receiver problem is you have Devontae Adams, as we already alluded to, is going to get paid like mega dollars, right? He's going to get paid ridiculous amounts of money, you know, missed 2 games and still, like, you know, broke records and tied records, what have you. The Green Bay Packers do not have somebody to replace Devontae Adams. And so, like, even if we were thinking, like, you know what, because I think he is like 28-ish, like, you know, it's like maybe turning
he's like
9.
Yeah, I think he's 27. I think he's like, I don't know. Yeah, I think 28 next season.
Yeah. So, like, he's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but like for a wide receiver, you know, is maybe you could say, like, I don't want to say twilight, but like the back 9 potentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And nothing against Devontae in any way, shape, or form. But the thing is that we don't have a person to replace him, right? And in terms of, like, you're having all of these wide receivers contracts who are coming up, right? There's no 5th-year options for any of these guys because they're not first rounders. And who's there? And so it turns into, well, we have to re-sign Devontae Adams, even if for some reason they didn't want to like save a whole bunch of money, right? They have to. And on top of that, like, you also have to go out and draft one as well, you know, or bring in some guy for like super cheap, which then also doesn't really solve that problem either. So, like, what's kind of your take on like our wide receiver problem and what that means in terms of, you know, the amount of money that Devontae Adams is about to get paid?
Right. Yeah, the wide receiver position is a crazy story because last year everyone assumed, right, we need a wide receiver. This offense needs it, right? Well, it turned out the offense was actually pretty good without it. You know, number one is pretty good, right? Can't get too much higher than that.
Yeah.
You know, they did all right, but like by not drafting a receiver last year, you're almost forced to this year because there isn't anyone that's signed. Let me take that back. There is no one who played last year for the Packers who is signed past next season.
Correct.
2021, every single wide receiver who played a snap is off the roster.
Yep.
Right. And so are you going to give MVS a big extension? Are you going to give Equanimeous St. Brown a big extension? Devin Funches, like, he's a guy who's around who might not be, but like, and then Devontae, like, you're almost forced to extend Devontae. Yes. Like, they don't have a choice because they're like, okay, we need the guy, and we really don't have anyone behind us. Oh yeah, Lazard isn't even technically on the roster right now. He'll be back super cheap, like $850,000. But like after that, like, is he gonna get big money? Like, you need guys to develop, and you can't have this, like, you can't have a position group where it's like super lopsided where everyone's getting paid.
Correct.
You ideally you have one guy who's going to get the bag, and that's going to be Devontae, but you need other guys on cheap rookie deals. And there's nobody on cheap rookie deals that's coming up right now.
No.
You know, they drafted 3 wide receivers, 3 years ago?
2018.
Yeah, and MVS.
Jamon Moore, no longer here.
Yeah,
and then MVS and EQ.
Yeah, and EQ can't seem to stay on the field, and MVS is a roller coaster. But he seemed to kind of figure out a little bit this year and doing a little bit more than the deep threat stuff. But like,
great in the championship,
and he's getting a raise this year. Like, so one thing that's built into these rookie contracts is if you play X number of snaps over your first 3 seasons, you get a bump. And so instead of making like $900 something thousand, he's getting paid $2 million, basically because he had to play.
Yeah.
And so, this team has a wide receiver problem because they just need guys who can be here, that they're not starting over. And we know this quarterback is someone who needs time, needs trust, needs repetition with his wide receivers. And getting those guys in now, it's a must. So they've kind of, I wouldn't say ignoring the position last year, but by not, rookie contracts and draft picks are great assets because they are cheap, young, controllable talent.
Yes.
And they just don't have it at that position. And that's more the need, not a talent problem, They have a future problem.
Correct. Yes.
A roster problem.
Because you're looking at the future, and right now you're having a guy who's about to be 28 years old be like your only wide receiver, like who's on. It's like, so like, what do you do, right? So like either you draft this year, like, and you have to like spend a premium spot, like really a day 2 pick, right? You know, like a round 2, round 3 on a wide receiver. Or like next year, like your entire draft is going to be wide receivers. Like,
right. Or if they don't draft a wide receiver, and then after this year, MVS comes to the negotiating table like, hey guys, you've got nobody. Yes. And so guess who's going to get overpaid? Yep. This guy.
Yep.
Because they have no other option.
Correct. Yeah, that was a fun video. And in terms of, you mentioned it before, one of the last things I want to talk to you about is we're talking about, you know, cutting guys and restructuring and what have you. Mm-hmm. There's the question. I'm not even looking at free agents. I don't care about Richard Sherman. I don't care about JJ. Like, I don't care about, honestly, I don't care. AJ Boye, don't care.
I haven't looked at any
real
names unless their name is Mr. Veteran Minimum Contract.
Yes.
Like, I'm just looking at the math. Like, it's going to be tough. And until we know what they're going to do with Rodgers and Za'Darius and like Amos, we don't know. Like, if they go all in, then we can start talking about it.
Yeah.
But until that point, it's going to be, we need to understand how much money we have to work with here.
I mean, the one thing I will say before I touch on this is like Rashawn Gary, like, I'm so glad that worked out, because if we were looking at cutting Preston Smith and we did not have a backup plan for that, I'd be like, oh, this is going to be real bad. Like, this is going to be a big problem.
Oh, yeah.
So, and again, like, there's still holes on the Green Bay Packers, right? Like, this is still not like they're a good football team. Don't get me wrong, but there's still like, there's still some holes that they need to plug. And we can't even address that in free agency at this point, you know, without obviously having everything in place. And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is I don't care about bringing in free agents. I'm talking about the guy, I'm going to ignore Kevin King, but I'm talking about the Aaron Jones, the Jamal Williams, and the Corey Linsley. And this was a conversation that started last year, in which I was looking at this and I was like, this could be, this is like pre-COVID. Like, this is going to be a problem because you can't bring back everybody. Is there a world where you see, I'm not saying all three because I feel like that's impossible. I'm saying like one. And what I mean by one is most likely Linsley or Jones, because those would be the higher contracts. I feel like Jamal, maybe you get away with something, but you see a scenario where those guys come back.
Yeah, man. And this is where the Packers are really good at what they do, is that they plan for these things years in advance. Like, I'll take a step back. So last year, I remember looking at their offensive line, and they've got Bulaga, Linsley, and Bakhtiari, all approaching 30 years old, all needing new deals in the next year or two. And I'm like, they can probably pick one. And so I'm like, Bulaga's not it. And so like, I'm like, he's absolutely not coming back. And everyone's like, oh, we got to bring him back. I'm like, was not shocked in the least that they were able to let him go. And then there's basically a choice. Do we want our all-pro center? Do we want all-pro left tackle? And I think they made the right decision.
I agree.
Sucks that he blew out his knee. New Year's Eve. But like, I think, well, then you look at that with Linsley, they've got 3 guys on the roster who can just kind of step in for him. You got Elton Jenkins, you got Lucas Patrick, and then they drafted Hansen. I know he was on the practice squad, but he's going to be a guy who's going to be competing this year. Like, they planned for this. Same thing with AJ Dillon. I know a lot of people didn't like the fact that they drafted a running back in the 2nd round, but then I like to look at it from the perspective, well, Green Bay knew that they had a problem, that they had their top 2 running backs both looking at free agency, and they might not want to pay one or both of them to come back. And they're definitely not going to overpay, because that's not what the Packers do, especially at that position.
Sure.
And so, and it helps against contract negotiations. Imagine if they didn't draft Dillon.
Yeah.
Like, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams can be like, cool, like that contract that you offered, you know, let's add let's spice it up a little bit. Whereas now Green Bay can be like, you can, we're prepared to say bye because we have this guy. And he had that game against Tennessee where he showed that, hey, there might be something there.
Yeah.
That being said, they've positioned themselves where they could be in an okay position if those guys do leave, which I, unfortunately think they both will. But, if they were to come with some sort of long-term deal, like their cap number would be reasonable in the first year between like $4 and $7 million, even though those guys are probably going to be making, double, 10 plus $1 million a season. They could structure something, but I don't know if they're going to want to be honest, because, and it sounds like, Rob Domofsky's made some claims that, in some reports that, they haven't even talked to Jamal.
Yeah.
And Lindsley said in his post-game conference that, Packers he hasn't heard from the Packers yet. And Jones, they came to him with a deal, but Green Bay's like, this is our best offer. We're not going to throw huge guarantees in here because you're a running back. Unfortunately,
which makes
the
sense,
running back market sucks. Like that's like the worst position to play in the NFL contract wise. And, he has a new agent. Like that kind of tells you all you need to know. Like, doesn't sound like those guys have very good progress in negotiations with the Green Bay Packers, does it?
No. Yeah, I hear that completely. And honestly, what it more recently, what it reminds me of is, like you mentioned, the offensive line and like having an issue there. It was like kind of when we had Jordy and Cobb on there, right? Mm-hmm. And like they were both old. And like I remember sitting here going, one of them is gone.
One of them's gone.
One of them's gone. And they were like, no. And I was like, no, they're gone. It has to happen at this point, because you're not going to be paying, because that's like we recently re-signed Devontae, and we're like, we can't do like $3 $10 million contracts to guys.
Right,
like that's literally unworkable. Jordy goes, Cobb goes, the year after, and that's what it is. Like that's the cap, right? And that's what, like, again, like, and why I find it fascinating, and I love talking to you about it too, is like if you just look at the numbers, and especially looking at the position groups. Right. And you're just like, okay, look at pass rush right now. Like look at outside linebacker. You have a Zadarius Smith and you have a Preston Smith. When we signed them, everyone was super happy. And we're like, oh man, we brought all these guys in, but you can only do that for so long until at least one of them's got to go.
Right. And that's a good point, because I know that we're talking about this salary cap in the view of COVID, but like, let's for a second imagine that COVID were the thing. Packers would still kind of be in a little bit of a cap issue this year if COVID weren't a thing. Obviously not to the extent that we're talking now,
sure.
But like, you look back at the sexy signings from 2019, right? When it's like, oh my gosh, we're no longer a draft and develop. We're using free agency. This is amazing. We've got the Smith brothers. We got Amos and Turner. Well, fast forward to 2021, their cap hits are almost 2.5 times more expensive just 2 seasons later than they were in the year that they signed them. Yep. So it's the same 4 guys who are not 2.5 times better players than they were 2 years. They just come with a 2.5 times better price tag, or worse of a price tag. And that's, you couple that with making Rodgers the highest paid player in the league, that year as well. Like, these things come to bite you, especially the way that they structure them, right? Where we push it back, way back. And, it's all coming through, right now. And unfortunately also with the top coming off at the cap as well.
Sure. And I mean, like, and I feel like we had this conversation last year too, right? Like, this is the cost of free agency. I mean, like, a lot of people give Ted Thompson like a lot of crap, right? But like, this is the cost of it. You want to bring in multiple guys, like, this is the risk that you run. And listen, I will say, we made it to back-to-back NFC Championship games, right? And people will look at that as like a failure and just be like, well, we didn't win a Super Bowl, so it really doesn't matter. And maybe if we went to the Super Bowl this year and won it, maybe people would be like, okay, we got to cut back a whole bunch, but at least we have a ring out of it. I mean, like, this was the cost of like competition, right? Like we went 2 years without being in the playoffs, and then we did it. Like we went almost as far as we could.
I wouldn't say that the Packers went all in, so to speak, but they didn't not go for it either.
Yeah.
Right. Like, Rodgers has, we talk about Rodgers needing weapons and things, like, we spent quite a bit of money in free agency, And we built quite a bit of an offensive line for him to stand behind. You know, like it's been a embarrassment of riches, that offensive line for years. And we'd see these guys go, and it's still just, you know, or injuries come out, or like this past year with injuries, and it's like, oh, no problem. We've just got another, you know,
Elton Jenkins, God.
We got another Pro Bowler, future All Pro is just going to step in, you know, as a second year player, and we'll be fine. Like, there's been investments in this team, you know, and unfortunately just hasn't quite worked out, hasn't quite gotten over that hump.
Yeah.
But
yep. I mean, like, we got some conversations to be had. We got some decisions to be made. And this offseason is going to be a weird one for the Green Bay Packers, and a different one. Honestly, I think that's what people aren't really.
It's definitely going to be different. You know, Green Bay has this reputation of they take care of the cap. They're not going to do anything too dangerous, you know, to hurt themselves long term, right? They're not going to go all in just for this year, because you never know. There's no such thing as one player away. I'm a huge, you know, every time I hear that, I'm just like, yeah, but what if you're not one player away?
Yeah.
You know, what if signing JJ Watt this year doesn't get you a Super Bowl? Now what? You know, who did we have to cut to bring him here? And then if we don't win the Super Bowl, then what? Right. So like, and the Packers are, you know, they're built that way, but like, unfortunately, these circumstances are tough, and we're going to see things as Packer fans and those in the media that just haven't had to like really digest. Right. Like, guys who are going to be cut or take severe, massive pay cuts simply for financial reasons. Because the Packers typically don't get themselves into those type of situations. They don't give out those gross contracts that a year or two they're like, oh man, like that was a mistake. I think Nick Perry is probably the biggest example, but they corrected that with the Smith brothers. But yeah, this offseason, I've been saying for a bit, just buckle up, because we're about a month away, and it's going to be pretty quiet, I imagine, for most of that month. And then it's going to come in hard, and we're going to be like, what is happening? And it's not going to be what is happening like when we signed all these free agents in a 4-hour period. We're like, who are all these names? It's going to be like, what happened to all my friends?
They're gone now. Like, they're never coming back. And I will say too, like, we're not the only team that this is going to happen to either. You know,
no,
like it's going to affect the league. And obviously, like, there's some that are in better positions than others and things like that. But yeah, this is going to be something
like you think about the teams like in years past who would roll over $30 million in cap space, and they're like, cool, we'll just not spend that and we'll roll it over again. So like, those teams are like, okay, cool. Like, we still have some ability to kind of play and do some things here, where as Packers, they spend their money. They roll over like $4 or $5 million a year. You know, this year's 3.7 million. That's pretty lean. You know, plus all those beefy contracts coming due. It'll be interesting, man.
I love it. Ken, I appreciate you coming on and talking, not of course just the cap, but also just talking some Packers football and preparing the Packers Nation for what's to come, because it's going to be a roller coaster.
Right. And you know, I can't wait to see what they do with Rodgers. There's so many storylines just based on what they do with that contract. But you know, if they do it, if they go all in, and if this is the year where they feel like they're just that one player away, right, or two players away, you know, then we can start talking some free agent names. We can start talking about these guys who can maybe come in, players who are not going to be looking at the veteran minimum. But until we know the full story, man,
you will not see free agency videos from moi until you can see it from all these other people, but you're not going to see it here until we actually can do something with cap space. So
right. And, you know, let's just hope and pray that maybe 180 is an early low preliminary number, and it's really going to come in at, you know, 185 or higher. That would, you know, every cent at this point helps.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Glad that I got the Smith brothers signature when I did, because it doesn't seem like that's going to be a thing for much longer, but we'll see, bud. Ken, I appreciate you coming on. Can you please tell the people where they can find all the wonderful things that you do?
Sure. You can mainly find me on Twitter. Just my name, Ken Ingalls, KenIngalls. Or if you search Packers Cap, I've got that in my name there as well. You can also find me co-hosting episodes weekly on the Unknown Packers podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Unknown Packers. This offseason is going to be crazy, as we just talked about, and we'll be doing that every week up through free agency and start of the league season and beyond into the draft and the great unknown. This offseason, like I said, this offseason is going to be one of a kind, man.
It is. Well, I appreciate you coming down as always. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And I appreciate you attempting to guide us through that unknown just a smidge, just a smidge. But again, always a pleasure, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it again soon, man.
Absolutely. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com. You already know all that stuff. I'm not going to do my entire plug. But thank you so much for watching. That's Ken Ingalls. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack, go.